New UI. Now I'm going to implement my new UI designs into the widget, which were kindly produced by Writers Psychiatricus during week 1. I first opened the GUI widget and replaced my previous placeholder for the minimap with my final design. It was then realised that I needed my render targets material to give me a circular image rather than a square one, as this was the design choice I chose to move forward with based on feedback in week 1 of the production stage. It took me a while to actually figure out how to gain a circle appearance from my material. At first I thought it lied within the widget by making the image circular or getting a vertical box and making it circular and having the image fill it. Neither of these were correct, and as I kept exploring, I realised that the problem must lie within the material itself, or the render target. I overviewed both and found nothing. After researching online and finding forums of other people facing the same issue, I found that I need to use a node called radial gradient exponential. This node is used in the material. It allows me to change the radius of a circle, which the smaller the value of, the less of the full image it puts into the final result. Since the gradient removing part of the image is circular, it gives me my circular minimap look, which I was going for. I set my final radius as 0.7 using a constant node. I then fitted my UI design around the minimap and moved on to the health bar. This was much simpler, as the design is rectangular, which the progress bar already is, by default. So all I must do is move the progress bar around and ensure that the image is fitted and both are anchored to the same spot. I chose the top of the middle of the screen. Finally, I inserted the design to surround the weapon and ability icon, and this is even simpler as it requires no fitting. I simply moved my original bow placeholder image to look a little better. This will eventually be replaced by an original design. Then I also made sure that the text was in an appropriate position for the ammo. For the beginning of this segment, I'm focusing on organisation, ensuring everything has correct naming conventions, event graphs have proper comments and arrangements, and everything is in proper files. After I'd finished this, I want to make it possible to switch between levels, seeing as I have to create a level selection menu. I thought I'd try on each level blueprint to set a boolean telling the game mode which level to open with. However, I soon realised this made no sense, as you would have to be in the level in the first place to set the boolean. Before I made this realisation, I went to make it so that my investigation state of my AI worked properly. I did this by setting the investigation area when switching to investigating, using the function on the AI controller. It gathers the location of the most recent stimulus and sets it as the investigation area. After realising my level selection would not work, I decided just to simply set the UI upon begin play of that certain level. So the player will always open the start menu upon opening the game, and then can open the level menu to select what they want to play. Then upon winning or losing a level, they will be brought back to the start menu map. Next, I wanted to experiment by adding foliage and some rocks to the outside of my castle, to give a more forest and cliffside aesthetic. I imported assets from Quixel which are allowed to be used for free. One as the texture of the floor, a collection for foliage and a rock model. I then switched to foliage mode, painting the ground using different strengths, radiuses, and densities each time. I found that this made the game extremely laggy due to the amount of assets, so I must create a settings menu later to allow the player to turn down the graphics settings. For now I'm going to make the foliage invisible so that my PC isn't stressed whilst in Unreal Engine. I then realised that my textures looked extremely fake, as they were repetitive and seemed like the same image over and over. So I clicked on the assets with the materials and changed their surface properties so that they scaled the UVs for the material. I set them to 6 on U and 6 on V, and this gave me the best looking result. Next, I need to create a level menu to allow the player to enter each one. I started by making 3 identical vertical boxes and placing them in a row on the centre of the screen. Then I added an image, text box, and button to each one. Next, I gave each aspect of these boxes naming conventions. Next, I imported the level design layouts that I used during preparation and week 1 of my production to be the image for each level. I applied Paper 2D texture settings and set the images brush to the new images. I then changed the image size to appropriately show the image. After that, I set my buttons padding to fill to take up the rest of the box. Finally, I inserted another text to demonstrate the difficulty of each level to the player. Now that the design is finished, I made the on-click event for the start menu. In this, I set the visibility of the box to visible and the rest of the assets to hidden. I also created a small animation to have the levels drop from the top of the screen. For this, I keyed the Y position of each of them in their original spaces at the end, and also at the top of the screen at the beginning of the timeline. I then added a play animation to the start button click event as just made. For the last bit of the level menu, I just need to make an unclicked button for the level 3 button, where it plays the fade animation and then opens the level.